Good afternoon, everybody. Uh, in this video, I am going to explain the AP US History rubric, and we're going to go over some exemplars, so that way you guys know how to write a DBQ tomorrow. I'm going to give you guys some tips and strategies to getting all the points. So first, I'd like to take a look at the rubric. So the first part of the rubric is the thesis/claim. To get the point on the thesis can be put at the beginning and the end, but I highly recommend starting with your thesis. However, some people have opted to do a thesis at the end rather than a conclusion. I know a conclusion can be kind of awkward sometimes, but I'd recommend putting it at the beginning. So the big thing about earning this point is you're going to make sure you're making a claim. You should not restate the question. If you restate the question, you will not, in any way, you will not get the point. You have to make a claim about the question. Think of it as if you were like in court. You're making a statement that you're going to have to defend. So, one example prompt in the prep book is, did nationalism or sectionalism have an impact on the economic and social? Which one had more of an effect on the economic and social issues of the era of good feelings? Say you pick sectionalism, you would have to staunchly say that sectionalism had more of an impact on the economic and social consequences of the era of good feelings. You need to make a strong claim, and you need to be able to back that up with some historical evidence. And then you would go into the fact that, say something along the lines of the North being abolitionist and industrial, while the South agricultural and pro-slavery, that type of thing. So you need to make sure you make a claim, and you need to have some details and historical information to defend it, or else you're not going to get the point. Contextualization, this is providing more of a broad historical context to your prompt. To do this, really just going to get some more historical events and developments in there. It could be anything, something that's occurring during the time period, before or after, as long as it relates to the claim that you just made. And basically, the point will not be awarded for merely a phrase or reference. You can't just mention it. You have to get into a little bit of detail about what that is and what you're contextualizing here. You're going to get into a broad scope of things, and that should get you the point. So these 2 points you should be able to easily earn. On the evidence section of the rubric, this is the biggest bulk of the points. There's 5 points here, so make sure you get this right. So as you can see, you're going to need, you can get 1 point for using 2 of the documents. If you use 2 documents, you get a point. But you need to get all the points, you need to get 4. A change for 2020, it looks like this point supports an argument in response to the prompt using 2 documents. So this point will be awarded to students who can support an argument with fewer documents than in a typical exam year. So you'll get this point here simply for being able to state your claim, I guess. What's the word for it? Support your argument with fewer documents than typical exam year. And you need 4. And if you want to get all 3 points, the response must accurately describe, rather than simply quote, the content from at least 4 documents. In addition, the response must use the content of the documents to support an argument in response to your prompt. Here is my strong recommendation. I highly recommend that you use 5 documents. That way, if you mess up on one of your documents, you won't lose a point. So for this section, I recommend using 5, and it's going to be important that you get into that you really analyze these documents and try to get the points here for each one. How you could organize the documents is if you have two sides of a debate, you can put the ones in support of it first in one paragraph and the documents against, the ones that support your claim in the first paragraph and the documents that are against your claim in the second for your counter argument. That can be used in place of a conclusion. However, if it's one where it's not really an argument, you just have several different things, you can have just different paragraphs. Just try to keep the documents organized together, though. You don't want stray documents. Keep them, that's how you paragraph things. And then evidence beyond the documents. So you can get 1 point for using at least one additional piece of evidence, a specific historical evidence beyond that found in the documents relevant to an argument about the prompt. So to get this point, the response must describe the evidence and must use more than a phrase or reference. This additional piece of evidence must be different from the evidence used to earn the point for contextualization. So you're going to need, once again, for the documents, you're going to need another historical reference for the documents, for at least one of them. And you are going to need to really, it's going to have to be something different than your contextualization. So that's what's going to be important there. And you got to do it for 2 to get the points. And this is new this year. You have to do it for 2. Can't do it. You have to do it for at least 2. All right. Now for analyzing and reasoning. This can be up to 3 points. So for one document, explain how or why the document's point of view, purpose, historical situation, and or audience is relevant to the argument. So I call this HAPP. You've probably heard this term before. So historical situation, audience, purpose, point of view. HAP. So it's important that you touch on all 4 of these. I recommend making a little grocery list. They want you to do it for 2 of them. Do it for 2 of them. Figure out the HAPP for 2 of them in the time when you're analyzing the documents. That way it'll be right and ready to go when you're ready to write it. We'll get into that a little bit more later. And then the final point, this is the hardest one to get. You have the complexity point. You have to demonstrate a complex understanding of the historical development that is the focus of the prompt, using evidence to corroborate, qualify, or modify an argument that addresses the question. So here what you got is, here is what you need, what you can do. Explaining nuance of an issue by analyzing multiple variables, explaining both similarity and difference, or explaining both continuity and change, or explaining multiple causes, or explaining both cause and effect. Explaining relevant and insightful connections with and across periods. Confirming the validity of an argument by corroborating multiple perspectives across themes. Qualifying or modifying an argument by considering diverse or alternate views or evidence. This understanding must be part of the argument, not merely a phrase or reference. In the exemplar we're about to look at, the way they did it was they actually took something from a different historical time period, and that was how they got, and compared it to what they were talking about. And that's how they got their complexity point. So we're going to look at the exemplar now. So here the exemplar is, we're going to, let me just get this off the screen. Sorry. I don't care if you see that. Okay, so just move me around a bit. I'll keep myself over there. Okay. Evaluate the relative importance of different causes for the expanding role of the United States in the world in the period from 1865 to 1910. So this is the best, like this is a 10 out of 10. This is the most points you can get. So as you can see, they put their pre-context first. I personally like to put my thesis first and my pre-context after that, or my contextualization after that, to try to give more context into the thesis, but it's up to you. You can see their contextualization had, they gave lots of different things. They talked about westward expansion, Louisiana Purchase, other events that are relative to this, what's happening here. And they give you some contextualization on what led up to what happened here and what was going on during this time, allowing for the expansion. You see, they mentioned U.S. Steel and Standard Oil. The thesis, while notions of superiority and American exceptionalism evolved and contributed to American expansion in the latter half of the 19th century, the most direct causes were territorial gains to compete with European empires and the desire for new untapped markets around the world. Therefore, global economic factors were more significant than nationalistic culture factors. Well, so this person decided to focus in on the economic factors and say that was the more significant one than the nationalism and the racism. So they did use the two documents, that the white nationalistic documents, that, like, well, what I mean by that is like the ones that support the claims that white nationalism and Anglo-Saxon superiority, which I don't agree with any of that, by the way. That's all. I'm just literally reading a document, but these were the ones that supported that was why we expanded. So as you can see what they did, they used the two documents in that way, and they summarized it. The acquisition of the Alaskan territory from Russia in 1867 exposed those views as many as native groups are described as uncivilized and at the mercy of American laws. That was their Doc 1 usage. And then they gave some sourcing. The purchase of Alaska, referred to at the time as Seward's Folly, can be viewed in the context of manifest destiny. This belief propelled American influence across the North American continent throughout the 19th century, justifying the expansion throughout the perceived cultural, economic, and political superiority of the American civilization. So you see what they did here. They took the event we're talking about, the Seward's Folly, and then they took a different event that can kind of contextualize what we're talking about. And that was manifest destiny. And it was not the same one from up here. You can't use the same thing from up here again, as it said in the thing we were reading on the rubric. So then they did the same thing again. Then they provided some outside evidence. The obligation or duty that Strong describes would be spread on a larger scale by Rudyard Kipling's poem, The White Man's Burden, which he encouraged America to colonize the Philippines after their victory in the Spanish-American War, thus civilizing and benefiting the Filipinos, squashing the Filipino violent resistance to colonization, and can be seen through the lens of Strong's envisioned competition of races, and thus as a factor contributing to increase influence abroad. So this is where he brought in the outside evidence from something else. And you can see he also does this with a topic sentence, and he said that yes, that did fuel it, but the person who wrote this believes that industrial growth was a lot of it. And then you see they did the same thing, and they took docs and they doc sourcing, and they says, I like to do my paragraph in support of the thesis, like, supports my claim first, and then the counter argument, but you can do it whichever way. Doesn't really matter. Then you have the conclusion where they restated their thesis, as you can see, and then they gave us some post-context. This is where they got their complexity point. As a second-rate world power at the beginning of the century, the United States found itself at the top, along with the Soviet Union, following the global conflicts of World War I and World War II. The Cold War would cause further American influence around the world through its policy of containment throughout the so-called Third World. You see, that's how they did it. They connected it to a different time period, and that's how they got their complexity complexity point. It's not hard to get. It really is easy. So don't freak out. Really, it's not hard to get the 10 points. If you just, this is my advice. You get 45 minutes. Take the first 10 to 15 minutes to go and look at the documents and analyze them. I don't know how it's going to be formatted exactly. I'm not sure if you're going to have someone to type on the computer or if you maybe just have a piece of paper with you. That's what I'm going to bring, a piece of paper so I can take down notes based on the document. And then you're going to want to make sure you have your HAPPs down for 2 of them. You're going to want to make sure you know which ones are in favor of one thing or another, if it's an argumentative thing. Then after the 10 minutes are done, you're going to want to make sure you get all the information down, and you're going to want to analyze each of the documents that you're going to use. Once again, I recommend 5. And then you're going to want to get to business, and you're going to want to start writing for 30 minutes. And really, with the order of some of this stuff doesn't matter. Some of it does, obviously, but to get all the points, it's not hard. Just make sure you have a thesis. Make sure you get your contextualization. Make sure your thesis is a claim. That's 2 points right there. Then you have your topic sentence. Then make sure you're organized. Make sure you use 5 docs. Make sure you're sourcing things correctly and provide some outside evidence. Make sure you do your HAPPs for 2 of them at least. And then make sure at the end, you restate your thesis, and make sure you get somewhere in here your complexity point. You're going to want to get something like this in there, and that will give you the complexity point. So really, it's not hard to go for a 5. Try your best. Good luck. I'm just going to show you what not to do, I guess. So this is a 2 out of 10. This is bad. So as you can see, their thesis, they did exactly what you're not supposed to do, and they restated the question. They definitely improperly sourced these documents. They really didn't, and the sourcing was bad. It was all a mess. Outside evidence, it wasn't well written. A lot of it didn't make sense. A lot of it was irrelevant, and you see that it was just a mess. So this is what you don't do, and you don't want it to be this short either. And obviously, you only got, by the time you're done analyzing your documents, you only have 30 to 35 minutes to write. So I mean, it's not like you're going to write a 3-page essay, but really, really try your best. Good luck. I'll be posting a video as well that will be a quick review of the 5 periods that are going to be on there, period 3 to period 7. I hope this helps you guys, and I hope everybody has a great day. Good luck tomorrow. All right, let me just stop the recording. Bye, everybody.